The prevailing strategic discourse centers on kinetic defense. Proposals such as the Golden Dome missile shield are presented as the ultimate safeguard against nuclear assault. This is a fundamental misreading of the strategic landscape. It fixates on the explosive symptom while ignoring the silent vector of attack. The primary asymmetric threat is not a launch protocol. It is a shutdown protocol. An adversary understands that the kinetic cost of a first strike is untenable. The real objective is to trigger a U.S. solvency crisis without firing a shot. The vectors are not ballistic. They are silence and paralysis. Vector 1. The seafloor. According to RUSI analyses, 99% of global data and over $10 trillion in daily financial transactions travel through a few hundred fiber optic cables. These are the arteries of the global economy. They are a known, mapped, and catastrophically vulnerable liability. Vector 2. Low Earth orbit. The objective is not destroying satellites, a kinetically messy affair, but achieving temporary, reversible blindness. CSIS reports detail the growing threat of ground-based lasers and electronic warfare systems designed to dazzle, jam, or hijack satellite sensors and communication nodes. The eyes and ears of the state are rendered inert. Sever the cables, blind the satellites. In a single, coordinated, deniable action, the U.S. financial and military apparatus is deaf and isolated. This is the Blind Leviathan Protocol, a state possessing overwhelming military power but unable to see the battlefield, command its forces, or access the global liquidity on which its solvency depends. The resulting panic is the trigger for the debt crisis. The missile launch is no longer the first move. It becomes the last, desperate move of a cornered, insolvent power. The motive is not conquest. It is insolvency. Adversaries are not targeting U.S. military assets directly. They are targeting the balance sheet. A watchdog report cited by Fortune confirms the mathematical certainty. The $38 trillion national debt is set to grow faster than the U.S. economy itself. This is not a political talking point. It is a terminal diagnosis of a systemic liability. A nation that cannot pay its bills has no leverage, only liabilities. To understand the blueprint, analyze the Ukraine conflict not as a war, but as a solvency crisis. According to analysis from RUSI, Russia's high kinetic cost and domestic liability from an unpopular war created a severe drain on national solvency. This weakness forced a pivot. It incentivized Moscow to engage in talks and shift focus to asymmetric vectors, economic and political warfare, because the price of conventional military operations became unsustainable. It is a field-tested model of how to bleed a superpower without a direct battle. This is the playbook being deployed against the United States. Adversaries observe the fiscal vulnerability and have initiated de-dollarization protocols as the primary attack vector. The proposal from India's central bank to link Brics digital currencies is a direct manifestation of this strategy. It is asymmetric economic warfare designed to trigger a solvency event in the U.S. By systematically eroding the dollar's global utility, they force the U.S. into a corner where its only response is to over-leverage its last remaining asymmetric advantage, destabilizing military technology. The economic decay is the direct vector for kinetic risk. The kinetic cost-exchange ratio has inverted. According to analysts at the Royal United Services Institute, or RUSI, the new battlefield math is irrefutable. A $5 million main battle tank is now a liability, neutralized by a $500 FPV drone. This is not an operational fluke. It is a systemic shift in the economics of lethality. This phenomenon is clinically termed the democratization of violence. The state's monopoly on precision, standoff firepower, has been breached. Lethal capability is no longer contingent on a multi-trillion-dollar industrial base. It is now an off-the-shelf commodity. The barrier to entry for projecting kinetic force has effectively collapsed. This creates a fatal vector for a nation approaching a solvency crisis. The watchdog warning of an almost inevitable crisis from a $38 trillion national debt is the accelerant. An insolvent state cannot sustain this inverted cost exchange. It will be forced to spend millions to defend against an asset that is, for all practical purposes, free. This is the blueprint for defeat. Bankrupt the adversary by forcing it to defend its obsolete, high-cost assets against a low-cost, disposable swarm. The primary theater of conflict is not geographic, it is systemic. While legacy media focuses on kinetic events, the strategic battlespace has shifted to the world's financial architecture. Regions exhibiting instability are not the source of the threat. They are designated proxy laboratories. Within these gray zones, adversaries are not testing military hardware. They are staging and refining economic warfare protocols. The blueprint for this is public. As reported by MSN, India's central bank has proposed linking the digital currencies of the Brics nations. This is not a trade agreement. It is the beta test for a parallel financial system designed for a single purpose: to bypass the dollar. This asymmetric strategy is calibrated to attack America's core systemic liability, its terminal insolvency. A government watchdog report cited by Fortune confirms a $38 trillion national debt growing faster than the economy itself, making a crisis almost inevitable. The instability engineered in these proxy labs serves as a controlled stress test. Each regional financial tremor is designed to probe the fragility of the dollar-based order, accelerating capital flight and testing the limits of U.S. liquidity. The objective is not to win a ground war, but to trigger a solvency event at the core of the system. The consequences of this economic decay are predictable and kinetic. As economic leverage declines, military posture must escalate to compensate. According to CBS News, this is the strategic logic behind proposals for a Golden Dome missile defense system. This is not a projection of strength. It is a Fortress America posture, a launch on warning footing adopted by a power that can no longer dictate terms economically. Simultaneously, back-channel negotiations, such as the trilateral meetings between U.S., Russian, and Ukrainian envoys reported by Sky News, become necessary to manage the escalation spirals that this financial warfare directly creates. The gray zone is where the economic vector for kinetic risk is born. The doctrine is known as launch on warning. According to analysts at CSIS, it is a protocol to launch retaliatory nuclear strikes the moment an incoming attack is detected, not after impact. The entire system is a function of a 30-minute flight time, predicated on the absolute integrity of sensor data. It is a defensive hedge against a decapitation strike that would eliminate command and control. This reliance on data integrity is the system's primary asymmetric vulnerability. An adversary seeking leverage does not need to risk a full-scale kinetic launch. They can deploy a targeted cyber attack to blind the early warning radar and satellite network. This creates what military strategists call the fog of digital war. The data feed is not just corrupted, it is severed. The commander is now forced into an impossible decision matrix. Is the sensor blackout a benign system failure, or has a first strike already destroyed the national sensor grid? The protocol's logic is unforgiving. Waiting for secondary confirmation risks the total loss of retaliatory capability. The fear of being disarmed compels the commander to launch based on an absence of data. This is the endgame of the escalation spiral, where a cyber attack becomes the direct vector for a global kinetic event. The thesis is not conjecture, it is a mathematical function. As the U.S. national debt of $38 trillion accelerates past the rate of economic growth, a solvency crisis becomes an inevitable event horizon. This is the core liability. Adversary response is not military. It is a protocol. Reports of Brics nations proposing linked digital currencies are the blueprint for a parallel financial system designed to trigger that crisis. The kinetic phase is a trailing indicator of economic decline. A state cornered by fiscal liability, as noted by CSIS, must offset its loss of economic leverage with hard power projection. The discussion of a strategic Golden Dome missile defense system is the direct, predictable consequence, a shield being forged because the financial armor is cracking. Therefore, the calibration forecast for the next 12 months is not a military exchange. It is an attribution impossible infrastructure event. Expect a cascading power and data failure at a Tier 1 U.S. logistics hub or a primary financial data center. It will be classified as a complex technical malfunction or a non-state ransomware attack. This is the calibration shot, fired to measure systemic fragility before a full-spectrum economic assault.